Thank you all for joining our panel discussion on Maximize Your BEAD Success, Insights from Industry Experts. Here to speak today from Nokia is our VP Broadband Policy and Funding Strategy, Lori Adams, and representing from Winncom Technologies, our Fiber Product Manager, Alex Cernick. If anyone has any questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to add them into the chat. They will be addressed at the end of the webinar. Alex, you're up.
Thank you very much, Dawn. As always, a fantastic introduction. I should get you to say that title 4 times fast. That's a lot. That's a lot. And for our audience, thank you very much for taking the time. We've got a really good panel discussion today. So to kind of set the stage of what we'll cover, we're going to start with broadband expansion, talking about funding updates, of what's the latest coming out of DC, what are some lessons learned from some of the sub-grantees we've worked with. We'll talk about networking and deployment strategies, what our procurement and supply chain considerations are going to look like to support BEAD initiatives. We'll get into some financing and BEAD strategies, business strategies, along with looking ahead at what the future will bring. And then we'll bring this full circle by talking about our upcoming BEAD Roadshow event, which is attached to WISP America. So again, a lot of fantastic things coming your way. As always, if you have questions, just put them in the chat and we'll address that at the end of this presentation. Before we begin though, I just like to comment, timing is of the essence and a lot of moving pieces are happening at different states. We'll talk about that through this presentation. If you're thinking about applying, please engage us. There'll be some contact information at the end. We can sit down, understand where your territory is, your area, and how we can help you build out a plan of expansion. So to kind of start us off, Lori, again, welcome back from DC. So after your visit from Capitol Hill last week, can you update us on what BEAD allocations you're hearing and if there is an impact from recent NTIA changes for applicants?
Oh, sorry about that. You think I would learn how to unmute by now. Thanks. It's a pleasure to join you today for this webinar. Yeah, you know, right now of course, there has been a significant amount of confusion and a lot of chatter over the last 6 weeks regarding various funding programs, the status of funding programs. And where we are with BEAD at the moment is that there is no official pause, at least as of 5 seconds ago, on state programs, right? And you're showing a map that kind of shows where progress is being made in the states. The states are continuing with their applications. They're continuing to collect applications, review applications for those that have closed application windows. And of course, we have 3 states that have completed their sub-grantee award process and are in the process of signing those sub-agreements and waiting for, actually they're still waiting for NIST approval so that they can actually get the funding drawn down to them, but they are in the process of implementing those programs. In the remaining states, they're either finishing up their challenge process or they're moving into their application periods, and things are happening quickly, you know, at the state level, so that's continuing to happen. The question is, what is going to be done on the NTIA level or in Congress regarding changes to BEAD, right? Because we've heard a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation, and you know, there's a couple of facts, right? Secretary Howard Lutnick was confirmed a couple weeks ago. He's the new Commerce Secretary. Ariel Roth is the nominee for NTIA to be the NTIA administrator. She is not yet scheduled for confirmation hearings as the Senate is still working through their cabinet level and other you know, critical appointments. But we anticipate that she'd be on the schedule sometime soon. In the meantime, tomorrow afternoon, the House Energy and Commerce Committee is holding a hearing on broadband, on rural broadband and BEAD. And there's multiple associations that are going to be serving as witnesses in this hearing, as well as a service provider from the state of Kentucky. And the, we're expecting to hear a lot about the challenges in the funding programs and the status of rural broadband and some of the delays, of course, that are famously documented now for BEAD. So what does this mean? Well, we're hearing that there's going to be legislation in the House that would make some changes to the BEAD program. Things like removing some of the climate, labor and wage requirements, labor union requirements, other things. And as well as possibly make some additional changes surrounding tech neutrality and some other aspects of BEAD that have been considered to be problematic for folks to come in and participate. So we haven't really, seen the legislation yet, but we hear it's in development. We'll probably get more of a sense of that tomorrow. In the meantime, we're still expecting, possibly changes to be made at the NTIA level, whether or not legislation passes. Some of those same things are expected to change. So at the moment, we're really not sure what form or format the changes will come in, whether it'll be officially part of a congressional bill, or if it'll just be done at the NTIA level. But we are expecting that to happen at some point in the near future, whether it's at the hands of Secretary Lutnick or Ariel Roth. In the meantime, folks applying for BEAD should apply with the information they have in front of them, right? With the program as it stands today, and that is the way that folks should proceed until we hear otherwise.
Okay, and I just want to underscore something, because it does come up a lot with questions. Nothing has been paused. 100% correct, right?
Correct.
Yep, we're moving forward. Changes are probably likely to happen, but again, nothing is paused. So again, going back to what we talked in the very beginning, states are still moving forward. There are a lot of states going to pre-qualifications, a lot moving to application round ones. If you're planning on applying, do so now and engage us, and we can help you through that entire process. So thank you for kind of providing that background. It sounds like that was a fantastic trip to DC. So
yeah. Oh, it was, of course you can't, I want to add one thing, is that, if you are an applicant for BEAD, or you've applied, or you're looking to apply, or you're interested in BEAD, please let your members of Congress know that you have a vested interest in what happens to the BEAD program, right? They need to hear from folks in their state. They need to hear from providers on technology choices, whether it's, fixed wireless or whether it's fiber. And, it would help for you guys to be in touch with your local congressperson and your U.S. senator offices.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. So you mentioned that there are 3 states that have gone through both rounds of applications. What lessons have we learned from those? Anything that new applicants should consider when strategizing their proposals?
Absolutely, and Alex, I think we have a slide that kind of details the awards that have been given out in Louisiana, Nevada, and Delaware. And the biggest takeaway is that the folks who are winning these awards are the ones who are most prepared. And if you listen to the broadband directors, then they'll tell you that the people that are winning are putting their best foot forward. And I heard Louisiana say that some of their top awards, right, they were looking to get more. Like they had they had been working for a year, particularly the consortium that was the biggest winner in Louisiana. They started working together long before the application deadline. Yeah. So, that preparation, right? That is the biggest takeaway. The second takeaway is consortiums work. And it's because you can apply for a broader area of locations, even if you yourself can't serve all of them. You bring in neighboring service providers who can reach those applications, and you have a more compelling application. So consortiums work, preparation is key, and private equity is playing a big role also in these projects, because they are helping to back the equity that's needed to carry the projects while you're implementing, as far as your matching funds go, as far as your because you have to pay invoices in order to get reimbursed. So private equity is playing a role in these consortiums and with these BEAD winners.
Awesome.
So, Alex, there's, as we talk about the different types of technologies, what are you seeing in terms of hybrid networks?
That's a good question, and that comes up quite a bit. So I take a step back first, and I'd say, in my experience, technology choices really come down to three major factors, and this varies by state, by project area. But first one's demographics, the second one's population density, and the third consideration is terrain. As I mentioned, every state has its own broadband program, everyone has its own policy, but they all have one thing in common: is subgrantees really need a solid plan for connecting every broadband serviceable location, BSL, and community anchor location within that project area. There's gotta be a strategy for every single location. Now, in urban areas, they have the highest population density. Fiber is an easy sell, it's an easy investment, it just makes sense. The same is mostly true in suburban areas, but challenges like rugged terrains, right-of-way issues, high costs associated to trenching sometimes make a hybrid approach a better solution. When you get into rural and remote regions, that equation changes, and this is what could be considered high cost areas. These are areas with often sparse population density with very difficult terrain. It makes fiber deployments, quite honestly, in some cases, cost prohibitive. So that's where fixed wireless becomes a practical, if not an often necessary alternative. So I like to use an analogy in these panel discussions. Just like you wouldn't use a wrench when you need a screwdriver, different broadband technologies serve different purposes. And with BEAD, the key is selecting the most cost-effective connectivity solution for every one of these scenarios. And of course, it's got to align with your state's scoring rubric. But by making smart technology choices, you can optimize both your application and you can optimize your deployment costs. And that's something that here at Winncom, we can absolutely help you with. So Lori, from a Nokia perspective, how does Nokia's BABA portfolio factor into BEAD?
So the Buy America requirements, you may recall, as something that was the final waiver was issued just barely a year ago. And the waiver is geared towards, is actually pretty broad because it waives most broadband electronics from the requirement to be manufactured in the US. And that's in part because of the difficulty of committing to volumes. You need, volumes to help offset the costs of manufacturing. And so, so what the waiver did was focus on customer access, fiber-based technologies, customer access equipment, the customer-facing equipment, because that will be manufactured in the most volumes to help support the program. And because BEAD at the moment is a fiber first program, they're focused on these requirements, US manufacturing for those 4 types of fiber technologies: OLTs, OLT line cards, OLT optics modules, and standalone ONTs. And so Nokia has a network in a box that we kind of put together, which is a little bit of choose your own adventure, but it's geared towards smaller rural deployments, where you can mix and match the types of products that you need for rural deployments. And so this showcases a little bit of our US manufactured products for BEAD and where they fit in that portfolio for rural deployment.
Excellent. And this is something that we carry too as a Nokia stocking distributor. And we can certainly help with the design and implementation of these. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on in the panel.
And so Alex, kind of going back to what you were talking about a minute ago with your hybrid technologies and looking at all of the complexity of BEAD, particularly with serving different project areas and BLS locations, right? What best practices can you share for making informed choices when it comes to design?
It's a great question. So it's It's a loaded question, but I'd say it starts with a one-on-one consultation. So we've got some really unique programs here at Winncom. The first is a QGIS database. So think of this as neighborhood information. So we start with your state and the county of where you have your existing asset locations. And we can look and we can see how many eligible funding locations are next to either your existing fiber spines, or if you've got fixed wireless assets that are next to those as well. So we can look at that at a countywide deployment. We can export those eligible, I'll say BSL, and that's broadband serviceable locations. Those are unserved and underserved, either residential or commercial locations. We can export the community anchor locations. And this gives us a really good snapshot of what's available. Now we can take a deeper dive. So think of it as an onion. I like these analogies here. So we can peel back layers. And the first layer is we can look at what are some of the existing technologies. Who's our competition? Is there existing fiber in that particular area? Is there CBRS? Is there cable? Is there an MSO there? Is there DSL connectivity? So what type of connectivity is currently there? We can see if there's any previous funding vehicles. Was there RDOF funding that was in that particular area? And then the thought could be that RDOF grantee could be your next competition. Again, giving the layers, we can help you choose the right project areas to expand into. We can look at UCLA information, average upload and download speeds. So by starting from there, that consultation, it then moves into call it pre-engineering. And pre-engineering can go in two separate directions. It could go into a fiber direction. So let's say that you've got an existing fiber network and you're looking to expand. So we've been able to identify potential locations. We then overlay that with that state's project area. And everyone's different. Some are doing census blocks, some are doing combination of census blocks, some are doing some things that are even more interesting, but we'll overlay that on a map and we'll come up with a trajectory. If you've got a engineering provider that can create a high level design, that's great. We can take that and overlay it. Or we've got a program internally called ComSource that will do some really cool things. One, it's an AI driven program. It will take all the BSL locations, it'll import the latest data from CostQuest, those Tier D licenses, and it will create an optimized fiber spine in drop locations. By putting in some questions, aerial versus barrel and what percentage, it'll look at train consistency, it will make suggestions, it'll do some things like ROI ranking, soil and terrain analysis, and it'll even create a 10-year pro forma, which we're going to need for that grant writing aspect of this. If we're talking fixed wireless, same thing. We look for KMZs of your existing towers, your existing buildings. We look at the existing BSLs and project areas, and we even have an ASMR database which could show other tower locations, American Tower, Crown Castle. And by using that information, we can help derive two things. We can use middle mile technologies like licensed microwave, 611, 1823, E-band for 10 gig transport with 80 gig solutions, and then last mile access, which a lot of customers are doing CBRS with either PAL licenses or GAA licenses, but we can help put together those engineering schematics. And then either fiber or with fixed wireless, we can create with that budget and then use that budget to work towards your narrative. So again, a host of things that we can do here in support, but it all starts with that first call, that first consultation. And again, I'll keep on coming back to this. It takes a lot of time to put these things together. And we're not talking about grant writing, we're not talking about professional engineering. So we want at least 60 to 90 days to make sure that we've got the best application for you. So engage us quick, engage us early, and we've got a team of people and partners like Nokia here committed to help.
And I just want to point out too that like that budget is so critical because you don't get 2 bites at the apple, right? Once you submit a grant application, you have to live with the budget that you've created for your award. You don't get an opportunity to go back and ask for more money if you have not adequately, for example, built in contingencies for things like tariffs. and you've put in some buffer for cost increases for a variety of different things. So that budget is going to be critical, and you've got to have time to prepare that.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's not going to be like RDOF where you can go back and ask for more. So making sure that we're working together to put the best narrative to make sure you've got a most accurate budget is going to be key to success. And making sure you got that right passing costs. So again, together we can come up with those solutions. So question for you, Lori. The availability of BEAD certified equipment is a key concern for a lot of providers. How does Nokia ensure its active fiber solutions align with those BEAD requirements?
That's a great question. And you kind of just leaving up this slide for a second, right? Anything that has a flag associated with it is going to need to be certified by your manufacturer that it is BABA compliant, meaning it's manufactured in the United States. And one of the requirements for BEAD is that applicants for BEAD or awardees for BEAD have to have a manufacturer certification letter for things that are required to be made in the US. So for your electronics, for your fiber, for any construction materials, any passive equipment that is required to be made in the USA, you have to get your certification letter for that. So that all of this is built into the notion that if you are applying for BEAD, you again have to be prepared, but you need to take a look at what your bill of materials is and make sure it's accurate upfront. And we are manufacturing Buy America compliant equipment as we speak, right? Most companies are for the first time making equipment at scale in the US for BEAD. And there's no BABA store where you can go and you can, shop a full array of products. We're going to be manufacturing them as the program is rolling on. So the sooner you get your orders in, the faster you will get them when you need them. But there is going to be a demand for products, and Nokia has the ability to scale up and meet that demand very easily within the confines of your deployment timeline. But it's just kind of another thing to keep in mind that you're not just putting together your application for funding, you're also putting together your deployment timeline, and what you need to do when in order to meet all of your deadlines. So so it's a big thing. And I know, Alex, you talked about your comprehensive ecosystem, and procurement is one of those things that could be a huge bottleneck, right? As far as managing the procurement processes and going through and obtaining, you're getting your RFPs, getting your bids, making decisions, and what can you do to help with streamlining some of that?
That's a fantastic question. So I'd say from a distribution perspective, first of which, Winncom's been delivering best in class, I like the word you use, eco center solutions. It's been almost 30 years. So as a telecom distributor, we see firsthand how procurement inefficiencies can lead to delays and increased costs. So to help providers stay on track, we focus on a couple key strategies. First of which, and I mentioned this previously, we're a stocking distributor. We keep millions of dollars of inventory on our shelves. We offer pre-stock, ready-to-ship solutions. We offer kitted services, and all that's to make sure that you've got product on time when and where you need it, and to simplify your deployments. We also do proactive planning. We forecast demand. We monitor lead times. We work with our trusted partners like Nokia. We adjust accordingly to projects as they move, and we leverage procurement tools to automate that ordering process and to provide real-time tracking for better visibility. Our mission to customers like yourselves is to offer that complete A to Z product eco center and everything you need for deployments. So Nokia, and this is a perfect slide here, what you're seeing is the active fiber that's BABA certified. Again, 55% coming from the US manufacturer. So the OLTs, ONTs, and transceivers are all coming from here. But from a depth and breadth perspective, and I like that eco center term, but our goal is to make sure you've got a one-stop shop. So not only can we provide the Nokia product, but we also want to look at the fiber solutions, which also need to be BABA certified, but it could be the bulk cable, the OSP cable, if you're doing aerial deployments or you're doing burial deployments or you need conduit. We've got vendors that are BABA certified that we can offer you, plus the compliance information. We also have the connectivity solutions, the cable assemblies, the test and inspection. So every fiber adjacent accessory you're going to need to successfully deploy that Nokia network. Now for hybrid networks, and we talked a little bit about this on this panel, the NTIA about a year ago introduced a waiver covering broadband edge, aggregation switches. It covered middle mile gear, and that could be licensed microwave 611-1823. That could be millimeter wave, which is 80 gig. It could be dual band, which is a combination of those both technologies together. Last mile access. Majority of what we're seeing is a CBRS play with either a PAL license or a GA license, but also could be 28 gig. And then we've seen an addition, and they call it a DOC de minimis waiver, but that essentially allows infrastructure to be eligible for reimbursements. So if you're doing fixed wireless and you need to implement a new tower, if it's Roan or Trilon, it could be the tower themselves. It could be the standoffs, the mounts, those infrastructure accessories. And again, our goal is to have that A to Z portfolio at your fingertips. So we're trying to make this process easier for you. And Winncom's been a complete solution distributor for 3 decades almost. So partnering with, again, leading suppliers like Nokia and offering that A to Z portfolio. And our goal here is to make sure you've got the right technology and compliance in place to maximize BEAD funding. Now, speaking of compliance, every BEAD product that we offer will be supplied with either a vendor BEAD certification form, and Lori talked about that from a Nokia perspective, or if it's an exempt product or DOC de minimis product, we'll have a waiver wire like this. So what you're seeing in this slide is an example. It's Winncom Telecoms. It's their millimeter wave E-band portfolio, but we're calling out what model, the product category for the exemption waiver, the description, the HS code, and the country of origin. So again,
and I just want to kind of pause for a moment to say that there are actually 45 manufacturers that have certified compliance with BABA and registered those certifications with NTIA. And so I encourage you now, if you search BABA certified products for BEAD, you may have to go through about 100 clicks to get to the PDF, but it will contain a list of those 45 companies with their website. And if you click on your manufacturer's website, it'll take you to their website where the actual products and all of this information that you have on this letter should be available for every manufacturer that's certified. So there is kind of an easy button for navigating some of this, as well as, you know, the best practice would be, of course, working with a company like Winncom where they have streamlined everything for you.
I think that's perfectly said. And I think I've got a reference slide somewhere in the slide deck. We have it's a portal for a BEAD program, which has a lot of fantastic things, but some of the compliance information, eligible vendor information is on there as well, along with what customers need to know for their states, along with some really important hyperlinks that take them to things like mapping and project areas and frequently asked questions, etc. So changing the trajectory a little bit. So beyond BEAD, what other financial mechanisms should broadband providers consider when planning long-term investments?
Oh, well, I mean, this has been one of the biggest questions, right? This is why we have 6 million unserved and underserved homes in rural areas, because funding has been a barrier to infrastructure deployment in these hardest to reach areas. So that is what BEAD is trying to solve. However, BEAD is not the only game in town. And you know, last week I was at Metro Connect, which is a conference that is really kind of geared towards private equity investments in infrastructure. and in broadband infrastructure. And you know, everywhere you went around the floor, you heard folks talking about BEAD, you heard folks talking about, you know, other types of consortiums and investments. And so private equity is a great option and a trend that we're seeing for to help support some of these rural deployments. If you're not sure about BEAD, or you're not sure about a USDA Reconnect program, or you're looking for something a little bit different, there's a lot of private equity money out there that could be available to you.
I'm also seeing customers using that private equity money and using the project areas and BSL designations for those unserved and underserved customers as targets.
Right.
So if you're not necessarily going to apply to BEAD, there's an opportunity to pick up some subscribers that are in your neck of the woods. So again,
Absolutely.
that's something.
In fact, in Delaware, Comcast, you know, some folks were confused about the Delaware announcement because they only gave an official BEAD award to Verizon, but they mentioned Comcast in the press release because Comcast agreed to reach a certain number of BSLs on their own dime. So they weren't asking for BEAD money, but they were taking BEAD eligible locations and they're building it to them on their own money. So there's definitely some of that happening as folks looking at targeting those project areas.
Yeah, perfect. So, and again, no matter what direction you're considering, private equity and leveraging those identified locations or applying for BEAD, we've got a program here that can help in tools and resources. So looking at the future, what emerging trends are you seeing at Nokia that are starting to shape the broadband industry over the next 5 years?
Well, I think, you know, obviously there's going to continue to be a demand for speed and bandwidth, right, and capacity. There is a huge, so one of the things that we've been talking about, and this came up on Capitol Hill last week, is AI. And, you know, we're kind of at an inflection point where 5 years from now, we really don't know what AI is going to bring, what it will look like, right? It was sort of hard to imagine what the promise of AI looks like. But we can tell a couple of things. One is that there's a demand for data centers. And there's a big push for data centers in a lot of states. That investment in AI is going to mean more data centers, which means more fiber, because you need to support, you know, infrastructure like a data center with fiber infrastructure. So, you know, that is going to be a trend that we are going to see, at least as far as industry technologies, where things are going. You know, a lot of it is going to be centered around AI, and then the products, applications, and technology that is developed as a result of that. Another trend we're seeing more on the infrastructure side is consolidation, right? And it's sort of just starting to happen, where you have you know, companies gobbling up other companies. You have acquisitions and mergers happening for folks in similar areas. You know, I think that is a trend that will also continue to happen. So there's a lot of need. And then one thing that's kind of unpredictable right now, of course, is the role of LEOs and satellites. And there is a need for such applications, particularly in some of these rural areas where it is extremely cost prohibitive to reach those locations with anything other than satellite. But I'll say this, that the more that's not going to lessen the demand and the need for fiber. So it's, you know, there's going to be an interesting kind of mix of technologies over the next few years and how we see this play out. But, you know, there's a lot. So there's multiple different trends that are kind of formulating with on multiple levels.
Yeah. So what final advice or takeaways do you think we can impart here? I was thinking.
Go ahead. You want to take a stab at it first?
Yeah, like what are some of the biggest mistakes broadband providers are making while applying for funding or hybrid that you've come across?
Well, some of the biggest mistakes are waiting to see what happens, right? Sitting on the sidelines. The longer you wait, the decisions may be made for you. Because if there are locations within your service territory that are eligible for BEAD funding or government funding, and you are not going after them, somebody is going to take them. And so, you know, that is an invitation to competition in your territory. So that is a big mistake. And, you know, there's the other mistake we see also as far as funding applications is in that budget. Putting placeholders in for budget does not work. You know, that's kind of how we got in the RDOF situation, where you had a lot of companies who were initially awarded RDOF based off of estimates,
Yeah.
and then they find out that those estimates were completely underwater. And so, you know, that is a mistake that we see often with funding, is that using kind of estimates based on numbers from builds from a couple of years ago, not factoring in all of the inflation, the cost of deployment today. You need hard quotes. You need your budget to be accurate, and placeholders will not cut it.
I think you hit the nail on the absolute head with both of those points. And just to reiterate, it takes time to identify the project areas, to go to the pre-engineering, to come up with a solution design, build materials, to do grant writing, to pull financial information. Some states require 1 year, some do 3 audited financials. It takes 60, 90 days. So make sure you're allocating enough time. And then the other thing I would say is it costs nothing to do the pre-qualification. I take that back. What it does cost is it could stop your eligibility applying for round 1 or round 2 funding. So if there's an inkling that you could apply for funding, engage us and we can help you walk through those pre-qualifications on those states that have yet to do this. And then make that decision down the line. Do I want to apply for round 1 or round 2? But don't take that decision away from yourself.
You know, you bring up a good point, and another mistake that we see are people waiting out round 1, right? Round 1, you're going to have the most locations eligible for BEAD funding. If you wait to round 2, you know, there's no guarantee what locations might be available to you. So if you really want to jump into BEAD, you need to be looking at round 1.
And some states are even letting you define your project areas. And that's not going to be available in round 2. They're going to be predefined and maybe not contiguous. So right. I think that's a fantastic point as well. Get involved early, engage us, and look for round 1 deployments. In particular, they're fiber driven. And then we'll work with you to look at your state's exact scoring rubrics to make sure you're in the best possible condition to win. And then,
well, I think that's what made the local fiber consortium really appealing in Louisiana is, right, it was a mix of, there were a couple of fiber ISPs, they had T-Mobile that was part of their project, and they were backed by private equity. So there you had 3 different aspects that we've been talking about today all pulled into one application. And I think, creative outside the box thinking absolutely is, there's a place for it in BEAD.
Yeah. So if there's one key takeaway for providers looking to transform today's broadband challenges and transform them into opportunities, what would you say that would be?
I would say, well, aside from the planning, just consortium building, right? Looking, you don't have to do it alone. Sharing of resources, the more, strategic partners you bring into your application or your project, the more cost effective you'll be able to achieve your implementation, right? So resource sharing, consortium building is a best practice for all of this.
Yeah, and I would also comment, and I get a lot of these types of requests, there's service providers looking to take advantage of BEAD funding that maybe had a previous expertise in fixed wireless. In fiber, based on that state scoring rubrics, is much higher than fixed, and if they're looking at metro or suburban areas, they want to use fiber. The challenge these guys have is they've never deployed fiber themselves. One of the things we can help at Winncom is we maintain a contractor network. So we've got regional relationships, national relationships with fiber contractors that we can certainly use as a referral program. In addition to that, we have grant writing services, either through referral partners or in-house. We can do PE stamp drawings. We can put boots on the ground for low-level fiber designs through our partner NextGen Engineering. We can come up with pre-engineering costs as part of that application process. So engage us again early, but you can leverage us. And what I'm showing is our BEAD portal, where we kind of bring all these aspects together, and it gives you one point of contact through your Winncom sales account manager, and there's a team of people behind them on the marketing side, the engineering side, the project management side, the logistics side. And all of our jobs are very simple. It's to make your life easier and to offer you that turnkey type of experience. So Lori, any last comments or things from a Nokia perspective?
No, I just want to say that for folks, just, there is a lot of chatter right now out there and a lot of uncertainty. And so you kind of have to deal with the facts that you know. And if there's, ever a question around anything, you can, folks can reach out to you or me, and we can do our best to answer the question. But, don't believe everything you read in the press.
And it changes day by day, quite honestly.
Yeah, and tune into the hearing tomorrow from the House Energy and Commerce Committee if you're interested in listening in on what's happening there.
So I wanted to just kind of conclude this by talking about some value-added things that we have coming down the pipe. So one of our big shows is WISP America. It's happening at the Oklahoma City Convention Center. It's slated from March 24th to 27th. On that Monday, the 24th, we're going to have our first 2025 BEAD Roadshow. And for this roadshow, we've gathered our top partners, Nokia being a fantastic example, but we wanted to talk about eco-center solutions, and in particular those who are looking at hybrid. So we've got experts from Nokia who will talk about the OLTs, ONTs on the active fiber side. We'll have experts from Lightlinks talking about OSP fiber and fiber adjacent accessories. We'll have Toronto Wireless there talking about CBRS and how that fits the niche for last mile hybrid solutions. We'll have Via Photon there talking about how they can support Toronto with their hybrid fiber and power lines along with their MDU solutions. And then Ceragon's going to be there talking about middle mile networks, how their licensed microwave and millimeter wave product lines can help offer multi-gig transport speeds to support those last mile efforts. So again, that's going to be on March 24th from 9:30 to 4. It'll be at the Convention Center, same as WISP America. I would also encourage you, if you're going to be at that show, not only to attend, but to visit us at our booth. We're at booth number 336. If you've got any inclination of applying for BEAD, we can do a one-on-one consultation. I'll be there for that. I'll have that proprietary program I mentioned so we can look at your exact area and come up with a strategy, or just drop by and say hello and see how Nokia and Winncom can help you with your next project. So that's all I have on my end. I guess to conclude this, just to thank everyone for their time. And again, just to reiterate, timing is of the essence, engage us. And the way we can be engaged is either bead@winncom.com or referencing my email address, a.cernic@winncom.com. This presentation will be provided to you along with the slides. And then again, we have that BEAD portal here, our fiber solution, and then to see Nokia's latest and greatest, their in-depth portfolio, you can visit that on our supplier landing page.
Great.
Thank you, everyone, and see you on our next panel discussion.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate your time.